Okay friends, we are going to begin with the first asset of the course, that is going to be the beer mug. We are now in Blender and we are going to eliminate all these objects. We are going to change to orthogonal view and frontal view, and we are going to the folder in which we have the reference. Select the mug reference and we are going to drag it directly to Blender. Now let's see some of the options that we have for the image. We are going to use the alpha and also add some transparency. We are doing this in order to visualize it better. Now what we're going to do is to center this image, guiding us with the Z-axis. These rivets that are in the middle of the jar must be aligned with the Z-axis, and we have it here. Now let's move a little this image in the y-axis to avoid interceptation with the objects that we are going to create. And also let's add here the selection arrow and turn it off for the reference image. This is to avoid selecting it by accident. Okay, now that we have this image located, we are going to add a cube. And the idea here is to modify this cube in the way that it takes the form of these wood pieces. These wood sheets we have here. So we are going to select the lower vertex and move them down to the lower part in the reference until here. And move up this vertex to the border we have here, to this angle we have here. The reference is not going to match the object at the beginning, only the bottom part is going to be matched. The bottom part gets a bit thinner, so the vertex here are going to be out a little. So don't worry about, because we are going to adjust them later. And here as we can see, it is very deep in the y-axis, so I'm going to scale it a little in the y-axis. More or less something like this. Okay. And now we're going to create a loop in the middle, and we're going to delete the whole left side in order to add a mirror modifier. Come here to the modifiers and add the mirror. Activate the clipping option as well, and we are also going to activate here the vertex to be able to manipulate the other side. Now we are going to add a loop here on the side. Go to face selection, and we need to delete this face that we have here. This is because we are going to duplicate it with the array modifier. So this piece is going to have contact with the other one. I will add here the array modifier. Then this piece we deleted is going to have contact with the other one. If we move this, we can see that that part we delete is the one that is in contact with the piece on the side. We are going to tell the array that creates 12 pieces, and we are also going to activate the merge. This is to merge those vertices of the pieces that are in contact with the others. I will continue adjusting this piece, select this and extrude it up here, and move this a little bit towards the center, more or less like this. As I say, this part is not going to be exact because we are going to reduce it later, so just worry about having the main shape. With these edges, select them and press double G to move it, and this border move it out like this. Well, now we are going to add the simple deform modifier, which is the one that is going to curve this whole piece on itself. We are going to select here the event option. It by default comes in twist. And we are going to select also the Z-axis. And we can already see the curvature of the object. Let's also going to tell him that the angle be 360 degrees to make a full circle. And we can already see that it begins to take the cylindrical shape of the mug. Let's keep adjusting. Now I will select this edge here and move it up where the reference indicates, this way. Okay, and we're going to continue with these metal rings. Go back to edit mode and we can select this border here, and in the side view press Shift D to duplicate it and then move it a bit here. In this way we can see that it creates a circle around the wall mug, and we are going to place it in the lower edge of the metal ring that we have in the reference. Also here we can move it a little towards the center in a way that it can penetrate the mesh a little bit, as it is here. Okay, let's extrude this up again in the Z-axis until the edge that indicate the reference. And we're going to select these two edges, extrude them, and press the Y key to do it only in the Y-axis. And we're going to move it more or less this distance. This is a distance that indicates the reference with the thickness of the sheet. Well, now we're going to press F to fill the face. Let's see. Maybe I can make it a little bit thinner, something like this. Okay, this is fine. Something that sometimes happens when we do this kind of operation, that is to extrude a border and then fill it with the fill tool, is that sometimes the faces are inverted. So to check that, we're going to come here to the viewport overlays and let's activate face orientation. And as you can see, we have here this blue part and these red faces. That means that the blue part has the normals pointing out, which is the ideal, and the red faces are looking inwards, so they are inverted. We are going to correct that. So select everything and press Shift N or Control N, and we now have all the normals looking out. We can deactivate the face orientation and continue with the piece we have above. Let's select it with L and let's duplicate it with Shift D and then press C to move it up here where we have the other ring in the reference. And this is our progress so far. Well, I'm going to activate the wireframe as well. You can activate it here if you wish. It is in the viewport display. I have it in quick favorites because it's something that I use very often. And now we're going to continue adding the rivets. To add the rivets, first we are going to apply the mirror modifier. Go back to edit mode and we are going to press Shift A and add a circle. Here, as you can see, the circle comes out quite large and that separates all those pieces. So to correct that, we are going first to change the number to 8 and we're going to change the radius here to a smaller number, more or less like this. I'm going to press C, and here in field type we are going to select triangles. And finally in rotation I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees in the x-axis so that it is now aligned with the ring. Okay, I'm going to move down this right here and I'm going to scale it and move it a little out. And here, as you can see, there is a stretching in the sides, like scale it on the x-axis. To correct that, go here to activate the vertex and we're going to scale it in the x-axis. Press S and X and move it in such a way that it reaches the circular shape. I'm going to scale it another little bit, and here in the reference it has this size, but I want it a little bigger. I will move it a little bit up and I'm going to make it to penetrate a little into the metal ring. Now I will extrude it out in this way, something like this. And finally, I'm going to select it again with L and press Shift D to duplicate it, and then C to move it to the top ring, located in this position. And this is what we have now. This is the first space to continue working on our mock. Well, now that we have this base mesh, we are going to continue modifying to fit the shape we have in the reference, that is a little thinner above. And for that, we are going to use a modifier called the mesh deform. That modifies an object using another object to do it. Then, for that, we will come here to edit mode. We can select this ring below and duplicate it with Shift D. And we're going to move it until it covers a little the edges of the mock. If we see it from above, this circle is around the jar. Then we can press P and separate selection. And now it is in a separated object. I'm going to apply the two modifiers, and if we come to edit mode, we can manipulate now the vertex individually. Here we can see that this one is separated, and that is because the simple deform modifier curved all the object around to complete a circle, but it doesn't merge this vertex here. So we have to join them manually. Let's go to edit mode, select everything, and press Alt N, merge by distance. And it merged all the vertex in the same position. Here appears an advice that says one vertex has been removed. So now we're going to continue extruding this up in the Z-axis. And the idea is to create a mesh that covers all the model, and that's what we're doing here. But sometimes it can happen something similar to the problem in the ring that we have. We can see it here. Some faces can be inverted. Go to edit mode and press Shift N or Control N to recalculate. And this is a good idea to do it from time to time to be sure that you don't have any inverted faces. Okay, now we're going to close this cylinder up here. And for that, we're going to use this option that we have here, and it's called the auto merge. I'm going to activate it. If you don't have this option, you can right click here and select show here. Okay, I'm going to select all this loop from above. I'm going to press E to extrude, S to scale, and 0. And here, because of this option, all these vertex are going to be merged in the middle. I'm going to do the same here, E, S, and 0. And now we already have this cylinder completely closed. Now, to be able to visualize it better, I'm going to come here to the object options, and in display I'm going to select wire. Now, I'm going to select again my mock, and now I can add the mesh deform modifier. It is right here. And with the picker, I will select this new mesh, which is this one we have here. And in precision, I'm going to change this to 4. The difference between 4 and 5 is that the 5 is a little more precise, but it takes much longer. The difference is quite big, so I recommend you to leave it in 4. And then we can press bind. And now, everything you do in this binded mesh is going to modify the mesh inside. As you can see it here. That's what we are looking for. So I will scale it until it adjusts to the reference. Let's see in the bottom side. Maybe use a little, something like this. Okay, that's it. Well, I think this is okay. I think it doesn't need any more adjustment. But one thing I can see is that the rivets were stretched, as if they were compressed. Then, to modify them, I'm going to activate these two boxes here, and I'm going to edit mode, and I will select the rivet and scale it in the x-axis, so that it recovers the circular shape. The bottom one also got deformed a little, not as much as the top one, so I'm going to scale it on the x-axis just a little bit. And we already have this circular shape again. Okay, the following is to start adding the subdivision modifier. Let's add the bevel modifier first, which is the one that is soften all the edges, and I will use it in angle. So in this case, every edge that has 30 degrees or more is going to have the bevel. We can adjust here the distance. I want it very thin here, and I also want it to add a bevel here in this part right here. So I will start moving down this angle, and there it is adding more edges. But well, here we have a problem, and that is that when I move down the angle, it makes the bevel here, but it also do it here in the ring, and I don't want the bevel there. So I'm going to increase this number a bit more, and I will move this border here inside to force the bevel modifier. There it is. Now we have the bevel in all these parts. Okay, and the ring is clean now. We only have this bevel here. That's what we want. Bottom side is also quite good. Okay, I will uncheck the wire. I will change this to Object Shade Smooth to soft the surface, and I will add the subdivision surface modifier. I will put this in 2, and this is the result. This is the final quality that we want in the surface. If we want to make these edges a little sharp, we can move the bevel. We can make this distance a bit thinner, or we can increase the segments. I don't really like this too sharp, so I will leave this in 1, but this number very small. Okay. Now we can start applying the modifiers. But before that, I recommend you that select all the object, select everything, and duplicate it to have a backup copy. I will press Shift D to duplicate it, and then M to move it to a new collection. I will change the name to backup, and OK. Here we have it, so I will hide it. Something that I look in now in the side view is that these rivets are outside the ring. I don't want that, so I will select all the rivets, select this also, and I will scale them in the y-axis. This can be a little slow because the subdivision surface modifiers doesn't have a good performance in this version, sadly. Turn this on again. They are still outside, so I will move them more. Something like this, better. I think this is fine. Okay, so now we can start applying all these modifiers. I'm going to apply the array. I will apply the simple deform and the mesh deform. And something we have here is that we have this edge here on the surface. And that is the same problem that happened with the first simple deform, that the object do a complete circle and the vertex are in the same position, but they are not merged. To fix it, I will press Alt-M by distance. And it says that it removed 12 vertex in this advice here from below. And now it looks completely smooth. And one last thing is that these rivets are very straight. So, in order to get the circular shape again, we have to change the value of the bevel. But this bevel is also affecting all the objects here. So we need to separate them to add individual settings for the bevel in the different objects. Select these three pieces, the two rings and the wood, and press P separate by selection. And now I have the rivets here, and here I'm going to change this angle to 60, I think. Here we can see that they rounded again. And now I'm going to increase the value here, something like that. Okay, maybe that's too much. Yeah, that's too much because they are joining there in the middle. Something more or less like this. Yeah, this is better. And that's what we have so far. And in the next video, we will finish polishing and start working on the handle. Okay, we will finish adjusting our mug and also start working with the handle part. We need to close this here because it is still open. And I'm going to collapse this, turn off the subdivision, and turn off the bevel. This is in order to work a little faster. I'm going to go edit mode, and here I will add a loop with Ctrl R and drag it down a little more. I will select faces, and with Alt and right click I will select all this poly loop, and I'm going to delete these faces. Now go back to vertex, select all this circle, extrude, scale with S, and then press 0. And here, as I have this option active, auto merge, it will join me everything here in the middle. I'm going to do the same with this one, scale it, and press 0. And we have this. I'm going to activate again the modifiers here. And we already have this perfectly closed. Well, we're going to continue with the handle. And for that, we're going to add an object. It can be a plane or a cube. Enter edit mode, and I'm going to press Alt-M, add center. This is with the idea to have an individual vertex. Sadly, Blender doesn't have the option to create a single vertex, so we have to do this in order to have one. And here I'm going to start extruding, trying to create the shape of the handle. I will also add the subdivision surface modifier, which is going to soften this curve. I'm going to activate this, and I'm going to activate also the skin modifier, which creates volume from this vertex. Now I'm going to press Ctrl A, and Ctrl A what does is to adjust the size. And we are going to adjust it to the size we have in the reference. Well, the following is to start extruding and create a path with this vertex. I will adjust them here to have enough resolution, and we should avoid taking a straight shape. And I will continue extruding. Extrude, trying to take the shape of the handle. These parts that I have here do not have so much curve, so we can make these polygons a little bit longer. The idea is that it has a good resolution to avoid visible angles, but without abusing the number of the polygons. We need to try to be as optimal as possible using the least amount of polygons. Okay, we get this. Let's keep adjusting all these vertex one by one. Okay, ready. Well, here we can see that the form is quite well. Maybe it's to mark it here. I'm going to move this to soften it a little bit, but I think that in general it is quite well. Well, now what I'm going to do is go back to edit mode. I can press Ctrl A again to move it, but I'm going to press X so that the scale only in the y-axis. Here this modifier works inverted. When I press X, he's going to do it in the y-axis. I don't know why. And I think this form here is quite well. I will move it here to the center. Okay. Okay. I will adjust it a little bit more. And now I'm going to add the modifiers. First, I will add the bevel. In this case, I'm going to use two segments, because this one is easier to control by the angle it has, because the angle here is quite regular, more or less like this. And I'm going to add also the subdivision surface with two levels. Here, even if we add the shade smooth, he is not going to be affected, and that is because the skin has the option inside the same modifier. I'm going to adjust the bevel a little bit more, and we have this so far. Okay, if you think it is necessary, we can adjust this vertex a little more, like this. Yep, we are ready, I think. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, well, and with this we have our mock practically finished. Here it is almost complete. And here, if you want to add any extra adjustment you consider, you can do it. You can compare and see what you can improve or adjust. And well, I think this is enough for this video. And in the next one, we are going to start separating the high poly model and the low poly model. Okay, let's continue with our little mock. Here we have the high poly model practically finished. So let's start making some modification to get the low poly model from this one. What we are going to do is to select everything, press M, and then move it to a new collection. I will name this new collection High Poly. Okay, so here we have this new collection. It is already separated, and now we are going to duplicate that collection. We can right click and duplicate, and this new one is going to be called Low Poly. Let's turn off the high poly, and we are going to work in this one, cleaning the modifiers and removing the unnecessary geometry to turn it into our low poly model. Then here I'm going to apply the first subdivision modifier. Here in the handle I'm going to apply the skin modifier, and the bevel and the subdivision surface is going to be deleted. So we have this as final result. We're going to do the same with this one. We are going to eliminate the bevel and the subdivision surface, And these rivets can be removed completely. Just delete them. I'm going to activate the wire on both objects, and this is going to be our low poly model. I will turn off this here, and let's check the high poly. We can see the overlapping between them. I will activate the random to see both objects. I will turn off again the high poly, and here we are going to start with the UV unwrapping. Let's select the UV editing tab, and we are going to start making some marks on this model to unwrap it. I will go here and isolate this one. Let's increase the size. I'm going to separate the ring. I will select them and then press P. They are in different objects now, and I'm going to hide them. And the following is to come here. I will select edges, and I'm going to start selecting a wall path of edges with Ctrl and right click. I can make a path, and I will mark the edge with Ctrl E. Remember that I'm doing this to separate these pieces into islands at the unwrap moment. So this circle here is going to be isolated in the UV. I will do the same with this circle, Ctrl E and mark seam. And here at the top, I'm going to select a path on all this border here, all this, and I'm gonna press Ctrl E, mark seam, and we separated all this inner piece we have here. Okay, come back here, and something that is also important is that all these cuts, all these seams should be placed where they are seen as less as possible. For example, this edge here is not too visible, so I will mark the seam there. Okay, I will select everything and then press U, unwrap. And this is the unwrapped UV that we have by default, which is quite good. Well, here in this part, we are going to start using this add-on. This add-on is called Text Tools. If you haven't seen the video where I talk about the interface and the add-ons that we're going to use for the course, check it because it is really quite useful, and we're going to use it for the unwrapping. So here in the add-on tab, I'm going to select 1K resolution to create a checker map. That is a little grid to check my UVs. Click here, and here you can see how is my UV working. That's it. Well, I'm going to reappear everything. We can delete this mesh, delete it. And let's continue with the rings. Let's go to the side view. Let's select the edges and press Ctrl E, mark seam. And I'm going to select faces, and with Alt and right click, I will select all these poly loops that I have inside and delete them, because those faces will not be seen in the final model. Well, I'm going to select this object and then the mock with Shift, and then press Ctrl L and Material in order to link these two materials. And now this one here has the same material that this one. We can't see a text right now because we haven't unwrapped this, but we're going to do it. So press U, unwrap, and there we can see a texture. As we can see here, this is a little distorted. We're going to correct that. Let's go here to this part, and I'm going to close this image. I think that is easier to see a UV without the grid. And using the same add-on, we are going to come here to UV layout. Let's select Island, And with right click I will select one of these and press rectify. And it is going to straighten the island. And now it is in the horizontal direction of the grid. I will do the same with this one, rectify. Okay. Now we can select the handle and select again this object, press Ctrl L and link again the materials. We are going to unwrap now the handle. But for the handle we are going to do something a little different, because this has a very hard edges, and if we don't mark those sharp edges in the low poly, we could have some deformation in the normals when we make the bake. So we're going to come here to normals, and I will select auto smooth, and in angle I'm going to put 180 degrees. Now go to edit mode, select edges, and I will select all these edges, all these borders that have 90 degrees. It should be a total of 12 borders. And I'm going to press Ctrl E, mark seam, and Ctrl E, mark sharp. So if we remove the wireframe, we will see that the edges are quite sharp. I will select everything in edit mode and unwrap. And this is the result we have. Okay, and now all the objects are unfolded. Now what we have to do is select all the objects and press Ctrl A to apply all transformation in case the transformation are changed. Here in this transform panel should appear any alteration, but apparently everything is fine. When we have a different scale here is when we should apply the transformation. Okay, select everything, and in the UE we can press Ctrl A to average the size of the island, and then Ctrl P to pack the islands. I think we can repeat this a couple of times until it gives us a decent unwrap, but we are going to manually adjust this in the next video. We already have our model completely marked, and now all we have left is to finish adjusting these islands. So what we're going to do is to separate them individually. Here we have disactivated the proportional editing. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to separate them because I will adjust these two big islands that are a little bit deformed. I'm going to adjust them. I'm going to select this and move it here to work in them separately. Here I will select vertex and activate again the proportional editing, but I'm going to put it in sharp. I will activate the transform tool, and now moving this vertex I will move everything here, but the sharp mode is going to move with greater influence those who are closer to the one that I have selected. I'm going to move it here. The idea is to make this more or less straight in the left side, a little more. Remember that with the wheel of the mouse you can adjust the distance of the proportional editing. Okay, I think this part is fine. I'm going to do it now here in the opposite side, increase it and move it upwards to make it straighter. And now at the bottom side, maybe it was a little too much. Here, okay, ready. If we come back to the model, we can see that this grid is much straighter than before. And we're going to do the same with the other islands. With this one here, I'm going to move it right here. I'm going to select all this side, and here I can press SX0 to make it completely straight. I'm going to activate the proportional editing, and I'm going to move this until it be more straight. I'm going to move it to the side. Ready. That is quite straight in my opinion, I think. With these pieces we cannot use the add-on because this is not a continuous grid. Here we have some cuts in these islands. The same here, this is not a continuous loop. That's why it is necessary to do it manually. Well, I'm going to select it again, turn off the proportional editing, and now we can press Ctrl P to pack it again. Select islands here, and now the idea is to try to use as much space as possible in this square, in all this texture space, and distribute all this island in all the texture space. So that's why what we are going to do manually. I'm going to move this, I'm going to turn off the transform. I don't really like this border to appear. Then I'm going to move this here in the corner, make sure it doesn't touch the borders. We can also get a closer look if necessary to make sure that I am not touching the borders. Here for example it is touching, so I'm going to select this vertex. I will move it up a little bit. Remember that you don't have to move it too much, because if you move it too much, an individual vertex, it can deform the texture. Okay, well, let's continue here. Select this and move it a little bit here. I will move this circle here, this piece here, and rotate it. This doesn't necessarily have to be in this way. I'm doing it, but this is more about seeing how easy to be and modify the result. This circular piece that is inside can be escalated because it really doesn't need too much texture space. It is not a very visible part. You can scale this because it doesn't need too much texture space. And in that way we are creating more spaces to put the rest of the islands. I can move this here to put this other one here. Move this and this. These curved pieces can be a little complex to adjust, but well, here I'm going to speed up the video a bit while we set up this UI. And basically the only thing you have to take in mind is that you should distribute the islands in the best possible way you can, so that it occupies as much texture space as possible to take the full advantage of all the resolution of the image. Okay, ready. Well, here we have finished the young wrap, and I think that it is pretty decent. The idea is, as I said many times, to try to adjust this in such a way that we take as much texture space as possible, that we occupies all the square to get more resolution for the details. And well, with this we are ready to prepare this model to export it to Substance Painter. I'm going back here to layout, and we are going to prepare this model for exporting. What we have to take in mind is the names that Substance Painter is going to use for the base. Then we have to name these meshes. The high poly and the low poly should have the same name, but they should have different suffixes. So this little part has to be called with the same name as this one, but it has to have a different suffix. That is for our intersections in the base. I'm going to put this in random. And here we have three objects. We have this one, and this one. And each one of them is going to have a different name. Then I will select this one. I'm going to call this 1. I will call this 2. And these two, I will call them 3. So I will select this. I will name it 1_low. This one I'm going to name it 2_low. And this one I'm going to name it 3_low. And we are going to do exactly the same with the high poly model, but we're going to put them high instead of low. But first there's something we have to do, which is to separate them as we separated the low poly. Then we are going to do that. Let's go to the high poly, and we're going to separate these rings. Select them and press P. The rivets should go with the rings, but here we have two rivets that are hidden, and they should go in this part. Here we can put those two rivets there to show the union with the handle of the mug. I'm going to come here to the rivets, go to edit mode. I will select this and separate them with P. I will select them now, go to edit mode, and I'm going to place them here so that this rivet be a part of the handle, as it were the one that is joining the handle with the metal ring. Let's do the same with the one below. Move it here, and that's it. And now we are going to select the rivets. We are going to apply all the modifiers. We apply this one. Let's do the same with the handle, and we can do it this way by applying one by one of the modifiers, or we can just simply press LC and mesh from curve, and it will apply all the modifiers. We're going to do the same here, LC and mesh from curve, LC, mesh from curve. No, this one no. For this object we need to do something else. Here I'm going to add an extra loop to make this border a little sharpened. And I'm going to put another extra loop here. So if you see any border that is not sharpened enough, you can put an extra loop to sharpen it. Here I'm going to put another one here, and it sharpens me a little this area. One more here. Okay. Now I can press LC and mesh from curve. And the same here. Now all the modifiers are applied. And now I can select the rivets and the rings and join them with Ctrl J. This would be easy alone. Let's select those two rivets and the handle to join them. Ctrl J. And now we can put the names. So this one is going to be called 1_height. This is going to be called 2_height. And this one 3_height. That's it. Okay, now the only thing left to do is to select everything. Let's go to File, Export, and we can export it as FBX or OBJ. I really like working in FBX because it is a little lighter. I'm going to create a new folder for here. I will name it Mesh Mock. Select it, and I will name this object Mag_height. check selected objects and export. And one last thing we're going to do before exporting the low poly will be a slight adjustment to the overall shape. I'm going to select everything. I can do it with Shift and right click, go into edit mode, select everything, and I will press Alt S. This is to scale it in the direction of the normals. If we take it out, they become fatter, and if we do it inwards, it's going to be thinner. The idea is to leave it at a point where the high poly mesh can penetrate a little bit the low poly, this way. Something like this, maybe. This is fine. And this is with the intention that both models have the most similar shape possible, that they be each other as much as possible. Okay, and now let's turn off the high poly, go to File, Export, FBX, and this is going to be called Moog Low. Ready. Okay, now if I go to my desktop, which is where I save them, here I have the two objects I just exported. And then in the next video we're going to start with the part of Substance Painter. Well, we are here in Substance Painter, and we will start creating a new project here in File, and we will select the low poly mesh of the Moog. That is this low poly that we already exported. And in resolution, we are going to leave it in 2K, and normal map in OpenGL, because Blender also works with OpenGL. And with these settings, OK. And this is what we have. This is our low poly mesh. Here I'm seeing that the material we have here have a weird name. That is the name of the material we created in Blender. Then I will put a prettier name here. I will call it Mock. And now we need to do the bakes. For the bakes, we open this tab of Texture Set Settings, go here to Bake Mesh Maps, and I'm going to activate only a normal map. I'm going to put it in 1K, and here I will select the high poly mesh. We're going to make a bake just like that, just as it is, to check if everything is okay. Well, that's it. Here we have the map. I did in a small resolution to show you this we have here. Here, as you can see, there are some intersections in this area, here and here, and here also, some intersections. And we had some names in our meshes. Those names are to avoid this problem we have here. Then, to correct this, we're going to go to the texture bake again, and we're going to check here match by mesh names. And in this way, Substance is going to look for the corresponding names for each piece. Then this mesh is going to make the bake only with the corresponding high poly mesh. This piece of wood with its corresponding high poly, and these two rings also with the corresponding high poly rings. If we make again the bake, here as it is, we can see that we don't have this problem anymore, because we use by mesh name. Well, now that we already checked that, we are going to do all the bakes again. We are going to increase the resolution to 2K, and we can add some anti-aliasing here. Remember that this is to avoid the jagged edges here, like the pixelation. We can put it in 2x2 or 4x4, but I think 2x2 is enough here. Then I'm going to select normal, workspace normal, ambient occlusion, curvature, and position. And I'm going to run the bakes. Okay, ready. Here we have all the maps. And with the shortcuts C and V, we can see all of them. You can see all of them. And here there are only one thing that I will correct, and is this in the ambient occlusion. Here as you can see we have like these intersections. Then I'm going back to the bake. I'm going to deactivate all but ambient occlusion. And here at ambient occlusion I'm going to deactivate ignore back faces. That is to use also the back faces of the mesh for the calculation. Let's bake again. And here we can see the change. We already have these zones completely occluded. The areas that are covered by another object are darkened, as you can see here. And well, with this we have the bakes complete, and in the next video we're going to start working in the materials. Okay folks, now that we have done all the bakes and we have our base maps, we're going to start texturing our mug. This mug is going to have only two materials, one for the wood and another one for the metal, in the rings and the handle. We're going to start with the wooden one. Then we're going to create two folders. I'm going to delete this and let's put a name to them. I always prefer to name the layers in order to keep things organized. Well, and we're going to add a new fill layer. I'm going to select here a red color that contrasts a little, and this is just to start separating our materials. We are going to add a black mask. No, sorry, this should be in the wood, not in the metal. I will right click and add a black mask, and then let's select the polygon fill, and here I will select mesh fill and select all the part of the wood. Then we are going to begin putting a base. We are going to create the base first, and then we will add more details on top, like the wood texture, the edges, and the deer maybe. Then let's start using this one. I will uncheck normal, I will uncheck height, and in base color let's look for a color more or less like dark wood, something like this maybe a little more darker, something like this for the moment. And in roughness I'm going to increase it a little, more or less 0.4. We need it to be a little reflected but not so much. Well, what follows is to duplicate this layer with Shift D, Control D, sorry, and I'm going to start naming these layers. For this one I'm going to put base, this one I'm going to put gradient. This is going to be a layer that will add a darker color on the bottom, and it is gonna melt up to give a little depth to our model. So having this here, we are going to move it a little bit towards, make it a little bit darker, and I'm also going to lower the red, make it a little more red. Here we can see the difference, maybe a little more, something like this. Ready. And we are going to create our gradient. For that, we add a black mask, and to that black mask, we are going to add a generator. And in the generator we are going to select Mask Editor. Mask Editor is a generator that we are going to use very often in this course. Here if we I'll click here in the mask, we can see that by default it comes with the curvature, but we don't want that curvature at this moment. Here is the curvature. I'm going to turn it off. The option we want is this called Position Gradient. We are going to leave it at 0.5. I'm going to open the settings here and go back to the material. Here, as we can see, it is not much visible. We are going to select here base color, and here what is happening is that the top is darker than the bottom, and we have the opposite. Then we select again the mask editor, and here we are going to click on invert. Ready. There it is already, but it is still quite subtle. Then I'm going to make this look more contrast. I can do that from here at the top of the generator. Can increase the balance to make it a little more intense. Let's see. There it is a little more noticeable. It is really subtle. Let's see the base color. Yeah, it's a bit subtle, but it is noticeable. That is enough. Okay, so we have our base. I'm going to select this color and I'm going to turn off the metal and the roughness. The bottom layer is going to control that parameters. Remember that the layers below control the top layers if they don't have any information in some slot. Well, the next step will be to add the wood texture. Let's add a new layer for that. And this time I'm going to put a very dark color, a little reddish, something more or less like this. I'm going to deactivate metal, normal, and here I will increase the roughness. And what we're going to do here will be the veins of the wood, so it should be very rough. There will be like the creases of the surface of the wood. Let's check. So then we're going to add also a black mask. And here to this black mask we're going to add a fill. And in that field we are going to look here. I will write here wood, and here it will appear some textures. We need this one that is called wood 01, the only wood texture that has substance. Select it, and here it is our texture. We're going to check this flat part, and if you remember, we move our UVs in such a way that it will be quite straight, and that is helping us right now, because here the texture is projected in the UV. As you can see, it is completely horizontal. Initially we had this island quite curved. If we hadn't straightened this island, the texture will have twisted then. So right now we are taking advantage of that. And this is for you to take in mind later. If you are going to make models that are going to have this kind of texture, then it's a good idea to grab the UVs in a straight way to take full advantage of the direction of the texture. Well, here I see that this wood texture is maybe too large. Yeah, I'm going to increase the scale here. Here it looks quite better. A little more real, I think, but it has right now too many knots, and to remove them I'm going to come here to the wood options, and here where it says knots we can control that. So if we lower it, it is going to reduce the amount of knots in this wood. Here with the first try I think that it is pretty well, but if you don't like how it came out, by default you can modify here with the offset, the position, and with this, and here you can also select random to change the configuration. I will undo this because I like how it was by default. And well, let's continue working in this wood, in these veins. We are going to come here again to the material, and we are going to decrease the height a little bit to give us a little bit of depth. Just a little bit. I think it's too much, maybe 0.2 or 0.3. I think 0.3 is fine here. And I also want to soften a little this texture. Then I'm going to add here with a right click a generator, and to the generator I'm going to tell it to use no, sorry, it was not a generator, it was a filter, blur filter, and that is going to soften this texture. Here it is quite exaggerated, let's leave it in 0.2 maybe. Let's lower it a little bit more, maybe 0.15. I think 0.15 is fine. Well, let's check it only in the base color to see. And that is what we have so far. In my opinion, looks quite well. Okay. Well, the next step is going to be add some details in the edges of the wood, but we will do that in the next video. Now that we have this base complete, we're going to start adding some details to this wood. We're going to add some details for the edges, for example, some wear. And also we're going to polish a little this wood. So we're going to start with the details for the edges. We're going to add a new fill layer. I'm going to change this only to color and rough. And here in the base color, I'm going to search a color similar to the wood that we have, but a little lighter. Something more or less like this. And I'm going to increase the roughness. We need to remember that this wear is going to be like some scratches in the edges. So that is going to show the inner part of the wood that is pretty light and rough. So we're going to add here a new black mask, and in that black mask we're going to select a generator and the mask editor generator. And this time we're going to use the curvature. But here, as we can see, we have too much influence for the curvature, so we need to modify these parameters here in curvature. I will decrease these levels here. This is like the bigger details, and the sliders we have above are controlling the sharper details. So if we decrease it, we can see that the edges become sharper here. Well, here we can see that this is not completely black, this is a little gray. So if we use it like that, we are going to have some influence of both materials. And we need this completely black, because we want that the edges looks very contrasted. So let's go here to the parameters and let's increase the contrast in this way. We can see that now we have a completely black. And if we go back to materials, we can see now this contrast. We still need to add some details here. I will increase the global blur just a bit, and I will decrease a little these sliders. We need this a little bit subtle, and we can also decrease the influence here, something like this. Okay, well, this is not completely sharp, this is a little smooth, but now we are going to add a second level of detail for these edges, but it's going to be sharper. So let's duplicate this with Ctrl D. I forgot to name these layers. I will name this texture, edges, and edges sharp. Let's go back here to the mask editor, and I will press Ctrl click here to visualize this mask. And in this time, for this layer, we are going to open curvature, and we are going to increase all the sliders to the sharper influence. Something like this. Let's go back here. I will decrease the contrast. I will increase the balance. Maybe increase again the contrast. Something like this. Let's try with this. We want very sharp edges here. Go back to material, and this is the result. This is too strength. We need to decrease this a little. I will go here to the first level of detail, and I will increase a little more these details. And in this, I think we can decrease the influence. In the texturing process, you always need to try different ways, changing values and try. We'll decrease a little more the influence. Okay, and this is that we have right now. This is looking pretty good, I think. If you think that you can improve this, you can adjust the slider that we have been using. Okay, well, let's continue above here. I think that in these zones we can remove a little this texture, because this part is going to be cut in the real life. So in this part the texture should not be appearing. So in the texture, let's add here a paint. So if we draw, we can see that we are removing the texture. That is because we have this in the white. Let's go down here, and pressing the X key we can change the color. We invert the color that we have selected. Now with this we are removing the texture, but we are going to use a tool that is pretty interesting in Substance, that is the symmetry tool. Let's go to orthographic. Let's activate here in display settings, down here the wireframe, and let's activate the symmetry. And when we activate the symmetry, we also can use these buttons. If we press here, we can select radial symmetry. As we can see, we are using a radial symmetry with 6 repetitions. As you can see, we have more than one dot that is over the surface. So we need to adjust this a little more. We need to move the axis of the symmetry, move it right to the center. We can do it here, right in the center. But we need to change here this angle. We need to increase here the angle to 360, and here increase this to 12, because that is the count we have for the wood pieces. Well, this is doing the symmetry in a ground axis, so we need to change the axis to the Y, no? Yeah, the Y axis. Now, if we draw, we can see that we are doing a stroke in the radial symmetry we configure. Okay, now I will change the brush. In brushes, I will move this down. Oops. I will search for the dirt brush, dirt one maybe. And I will start doing some little strokes. We are doing this in all the pieces at the same time. Something like this. We have removed a lot of the texture, and this looks much more natural. Okay, let's do the same in this layer here, in the edges. We're going to add a paint, and I press X to invert the brush, and we can draw here a little. I will decrease the opacity, and also here in the brush properties I will select here the size and remove the pressure, and in the flow select the pressure. Something like this, very soft, to add some details of the inner part of the wood. Also here, I think we can also use the finger tool to smooth these strokes. Okay. Okay, I think this is done. Let's go back to the brush and let's see this from far. Uncheck wire. And this is the result we have right now. I think that this is too contrasted. So let's go here to the edges. I think we can decrease a little the color. Also here, more or less like this. Okay, and here we have now the wood material mostly complete. If you want to add something more, you now know the process to do it. You can add layers, mask, and with the brushes and with the generators, you can create different masks for the edges or more details. And in the next video, we're going to continue with the metal material. We will continue now with our metallic material, since we have finished with the wood. I made some slight adjustments here in the base and in the gradient. I increased a little the color. I made it a little bit lighter. And here in this area, I also removed a bit of the texture of the wood. That are some simple adjustments, but it may notice it a little more lighter. Well, then we're going to continue with the metal. Let's close this, and in metal we're going to add a black mask. Select the polygon fill and select mesh with fill, and let's select these rings. These two rings we have here, we can do it from this little corner to not select the rest. And here, we cannot see it right now, but if we press Alt click, we can see the mask. So if we create a new fill layer, let's put here a blue color, for example, and move it here. We can see a change now. So the procedure with the metal is going to be simpler than with the wood. For the metal, we are going to put a base layer that is going to be completely metallic. Remove normal, remove height, and in roughness, let's put an intermediate point, more or less 0.5, a little less. And in color, let's put some gray, and gray is close to the blue. Something around here. I will say something like that. Or so. Well, the metal we have only two layers. One layer that will be the base, and the other that is going to be the weir. So let's duplicate this layer with Ctrl D, and we will apply a very lighter color, but in this we are going to shoot an orange, something like this. Just a little orange, but enough to make a good contrast. Let's lower it a little more, something like that. So let's go back here and click and add black mask. Let's add a new generator, and in that generator select mask editor. Okay, then we got this. What we really want is to put the influence of the curvature, but we're also going to put the influence of the workspace normal, which is to put a bit of influence on the upper sides and in the areas that we can see from above. So let's go to mask editor. Let's go down to workspace normal. Here it is. First, let's lower the curvature and let's increase a little here. You can see how it looks like. Maybe it's quite intense. So we're going to open this panel. Let's increase a lot the contrast, and let's see these values so that it is just a little perceptible. Something more or less like this, maybe a little less. When come to base color, you can see that it is only a bit noticeable. It is actually pretty subtle. Well, let's get on with it. I will select the brush here to remove the wireframe, and we are going to keep adding the details of the curvature. I'm going to increase this a little. I'm going to open curvature, and here I have by default in edges, but I also want the cavities, so I will select dual. And now we are going to lower all these influences and leave those that are on top. Yeah, it is looking very subtle. Maybe too subtle. I want it to look much more marked. So I'm going to come in here. I will raise the balance, and then I will increase also the contrast in this way. Maybe we can make this color a little lighter, more or less like this. And I think we can also increase the roughness. Lower it, sorry. Alright. I think this is fine. Let's go back to our mask editor and let's keep playing with these properties. Here I can increase the curvature this way. Yeah, that's what I want, that you notice it quite a bit. I think this looks fine. Okay. Here in this moment I think this is too flat. To make it a little more random, I'm going to add a filter, and that filter will be the warp. Here it is, select it, and what it does is to add some randomness. I will increase this a little. Let's try with another number. No, let's leave it in 1000. And there you can see that what this generator is doing. It is making like some sort of a stain. Let's try these other options. No, by default it's much better. Well, let's continue setting the colors. I think this blue is too intense, so I will decrease it a bit. More or less like this. And I will also add another generator. I will right click, another filter. I will right click here and add a filter, sharpen. Okay, and this is what we have. I will lower a bit. And what remains is to continue setting all these parameters. I can raise or lower the warp a little. With the mask editor I can increase the influence of the curvature. Here. I can also increase the influence of the world normal space. And let's modify a little the roughness. I just want to make this a little less reflective, and make the other a little more reflective. Something more or less like this. Alright, so this is basically our metal. There is still work left to do here, but that is because we're going to put some dirt on it, and also a little bit of the ambient occlusion, like some grime and a bit of darkness in the cavities. But we're going to do all of that over all the layers to make some influence of the wood too. So, see you soon in the next video to finish that step. We already have our two materials, and now we're going to add the final details to the wall mock. So let's create a new layer, a new fill layer, and we're going to put this over everything, over the metal and over the wood. And this layer is going to be a bit of ambient occlusion influence. Let's turn off the height. Let's turn off the normal. And let's apply here a reddish color for the base color, but quite dark, more or less around here. And in roughness, I'm going to increase the value. So the idea is to add a black mask, and we're going to add the same modifier. The same generator, the mask editor generator. And here it shows, as usual, the curvature, but this time we want is the ambient occlusion. So let's turn off this, no, sorry, this not, the curvature off, and increase the ambient occlusion. Let's set this in normal. And here with the balance we can control how much we want. But in this case we want the white to be where we have the black. So we're going to invert this. That is just what we want. And let's go back to material. And as we can see, it's influencing a little on this inner side. Let's make that influence a little more intense. Around here maybe. We can also increase this red a little bit to be more noticed. And the color is more or less similar to that we have in the wood texture. A little darker. And let's manipulate again the influence. A ver. Let's try this. Maybe it's too intense. Maybe something around here. Okay, just see this right now. I think it's okay. And I do like how it is looking right now. Okay, that is the influence of the mask. If it is too intense, we can decrease it a bit from here. I think that's fine. And well, to finish, we're going to add to everything a layer of dirt that is going to enhance a lot the realism of this model. So we add here a new mask, a new layer, sorry. Let's turn the metal off, the normal, the height, and here we can put a very dark color. No, I think we have to maintain metal because otherwise we're going to notice some difference. Let's put 0 to the metalness, and with the roughness almost to the bottom, around here. And for color we're going to give it an almost black tone, but with a bit of red, like a very dark brown or something more or less like this, I think. And we're going to add a black mask and a generator, and this time we're going to use the dirt generator, this dirt. We pick it and the result is this. In this moment it is very intense, so we can lower it a little. Let's lower the level of dirt, but we can increase a little the grunge, that is like the texture. And we can apply here, we can play with these parameters, we can increase the contrast. I think it is influencing too much on the occlusion. Let's see if we can lower the occlusion level a little. No, I think no. Well, so we can go on playing with these sliders and with the scale as well. I think the scale is going to get a little smaller. We can do a couple of tests to see how it is looking. And I think I will also add a blur filter on it because I think it's too contrasted. It's too contrasted. Let's add here the filter blur, and we're going to put here a very low number, maybe 0.2. Okay. And well, this is basically our mock finish. That will follow here is simply to keep on setting the values of the layers, how much dirt we want, how much of these colors. For example, you can change here these colors, and you can decide after making some tests. Well, I think the blur is too intense. Let's set this in 15, maybe 0.14. Okay, I think this is good enough. Okay guys, I think that we are done with this mock. And in the last video of this series, we are going to export this model as such. We will also configure our exporting parameters and export the textures to apply them to the model in any other program or rendering engine. So let's see you there in the last video. Now that we have our model finished, the only thing left is simply to export the textures. For that, we're going to come here to File, Export Textures, or we can press the shortcut Ctrl-Shift-E. And here in Configuration, we should have selected here some configuration by default, one of all of them. But we are going to use a custom configuration because we are going to need some specific maps. Then we're going to come here, and the idea is that we export the normal map, the metalness map, the roughness map, and the color map. We only need those 4 maps. So we are going to come here to one of these that is already created. For example, this called metal rough, PR metal rough, and I'm going to duplicate it. We have this configuration here at the end. I'm going to double click it and I will change the name to PBR custom. And these are all the maps this configuration have. There it is the base color that includes an alpha. This is in case we have some transparency. And this prefix here is the name that our texture are going to have. When, for example, here, the name will be the name of the mesh, mock poly, then underscore mock, which is the name of the texture set, and finally base color. I'm going to eliminate this first mesh because I want only the name to be the texture set. Then I will eliminate all this, leaving the money symbol here. Okay, and now we are going to eliminate the maps we don't need. I think that the only map we don't need is this one, the Hague. And I don't think we use the emissive map in this course, but it is possible that later you create a new asset and you use the emissive material. Well, then now we have all the maps that we need, and let's check one last thing. Here the normal map, which is this, is telling us what type of normal map is being used. In this case here, if we see the color of the square, it is using the normal map of DirectX. But we are also going to work in Blender. Blender uses OpenGL, so we are going to change it to OpenGL. To do that, simply drag the OpenGL normal map and drop it here and select RGB channels. In that way we are replacing the previous map. And done. Now we have the 5 maps configured, and let's export them. Go back to export. Let's look for the custom configuration that is always the last. This called PR custom. In resolution, I'm going to select 2K by 2K, which is the default, and let's select the folder. I'm going to put it here in this folder on the desktop, mock textures, select the folder and export. This used to be pretty fast, as you can see. Okay, and now we can open this folder. But first, there is something we can read here. It says that the map mock emissive cannot be generated for the texture set. And that is because we don't have any emissive material. Then the map is not going to be created. If we had an emissive material, it will be created. So let's open the folder. And here we have the 4 images, which are the color map, the metalness, the normal map, and the roughness map. And with this, we already can work on any rendering engine or any other 3D program. So then, I hope you have enjoyed the process of this first asset and you have learned something. And I will see you in the next asset, that is going to be the war horn. So, see you there.